making me hungry.
Speak.
What part you want to brief? All right, I'm on. All right. If you want to gather in and take your seats. Did you want the music stand? For your papers. More of highlights. Of the highlights. Or you can just read the thing if you want to. It is. Just give some highlights, and if people don't have it, we can make sure they get a copy. Okay.
Hey, Brian. Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. So, obviously, this is a big process, and we've come a long way, and we have a lot of stuff yet to do. So we thought this is a good opportunity to kind of brief everybody on where we're at and where we're going. And also, we want to make sure that we're as transparent as we can be on everything and give the congregation updates on everything. We want to hear from you, your questions, concerns. And we want to make sure. What? Oh, sorry, I should back up. My name is Doug Burchell, and I'm the council chair for Calvary Fargo here. So, sorry for that, for those that don't know me. So the council and along with the staff and many others, we all have a role in this process. And so where we're at right now is there's a very prescribed process and a checklist, and we've met with the district superintendent. We've gone through that. It's a very deliberate process, and we want to make sure we're following that as closely as possible. And so this meeting here is part of that. We do have quite a long checklist of things to do. You've seen a lot of correspondence from us. We've had a lot of town hall meetings, official letters. You saw the letter that came out in the mail and through email from the district superintendent. That's all part of this process. We want to be, again, very transparent and also follow the process as close as we can. So let me make sure I cover everything kind of where we're at so far. So right where we're at right now is we've heard from the congregation. You've taken those surveys. You can still do that. We'll still take into consideration all of those responses. And then what we've done is, and this is part of the process as well, is we've completed this readiness assessment. And that's where the district superintendent wants us to go through, answer all these questions to determine whether or not we are ready to move to the next step with the disaffiliation process. And so we've done that. We have a draft of that. That's not complete. Part of what we're wanting to do today is hear any additional comments or concerns or whatever and incorporate that into the final document. And then on Thursday, when we meet with the district superintendent, we will give her that information, and then we'll make a determination at that point if we're ready to proceed to the next step, which would then be to schedule an actual congregational meeting, conference, where we actually formally vote whether or not we're going to proceed, or whether or not we're going to actually disaffiliate, and that's when that'll be a formal vote. So, probably next, should we go through these questions? Yeah, okay. All right, so maybe we'll just take a few minutes here, go through this disaffiliation readiness assessment. Again, this is the document that we're going to use when we meet with the district superintendent on Thursday. So there's a
copy of or have seen the questions or can access it. You can access it through the info. There's one in there called the Readiness Disaffiliation Congregational Readiness Assessment if you want to see electronically. We have hard copies. If you want us to bring some hard copies, we can bring those in if you raise your hand, and you can see a copy of the report. We just want you to be able to see the information. And so Becky's going to grab those now. All right.
All right. So the first question is, what is the leadership's rationale for requesting disaffiliation from the UMC? I think this is probably something we've all seen. I mean, we've seen loss of membership. We've seen, just generally giving going down. We think this is a big issue that's probably keeping people from coming or causing people to want to leave. That's part of our answer there on that. There's some kind of more detailed answers that we've put down on that, but That's the first question. The next one, what is the expected immediate impact of disaffiliation in terms of participation, affiliation with the congregation? I would say, and what we've kind of answered there is probably very minimal. We've, as a church, local church, probably not been affiliated very closely with the UMC in the most recent years. So we don't actually foresee much change there. And then it asks us, how have we measured that? We've done surveys, we've had town hall meetings. This started a number of years ago when Pastor Dave was here. We have actually had formed in 2019 a Way Forward committee that kind of tackled this issue. And so I think we've determined that the pulse of this congregation is that this is kind of the direction we wanted to go for several years now. Next question, what, if any, impact could disaffiliation have on the key ministries of your church? We actually think this could be a positive thing. We'll get some positive momentum when we've officially disaffiliated from the church. How do you anticipate your relationship or connection with other United Methodist churches or the Dakotas Conference ministries changing if you disaffiliate? Again, I don't think we've been very closely tied with other churches in this community or even in the Dakotas Conference, so probably minimal impact there. How has the congregation assessed the potential financial impact of disaffiliation on its giving and expenses, and how are you planning for those impacts? Again, I think we anticipate actually a positive impact when this, all the issues surrounding this are resolved if we do disaffiliate. How is the congregation intending to meet the financial obligations of disaffiliation, which is the apportionment and pension liability? And Brian, if you have that graphic, maybe we could put that up right now. These are, so the latest numbers on the potential cost to disaffiliate. That was in the email that Pastor Henry sent out. So here's it's probably kind of hard to see some of those numbers, but this is the latest estimation of the total cost to disaffiliate. The bottom number is around 400,000, and that's a little bit of a moving target, but that's going to be pretty close to that number. So the question is, how have we prepared for that? One, we have cash. We have some cash, and then we also have an arrangement on our building mortgage where we can readvance on that loan as needed. So what we've done is we've taken any extra cash that we've had, paid down on the loan just simply to pay or to save on interest costs. And so we have the ability to advance that back up, and we've done that intentionally. Yeah, so Steve's question is, how much do we owe even if we would stay? And to Steve's point, that's really kind of true. So as part of this whole document, the document that Pastor Henry sent out in email that had this spreadsheet on it actually kind of went through the apportionments, what we've paid in the past, what we should have paid, and what we haven't paid. And the point is, we haven't paid nearly what we would have been required to pay had the conference not given us a lot of grace in that area. After we built this building, there was a few years there where we didn't pay anything. Then it was at a very reduced rate. Even the most recent years that we did pay apportionments were really at half the level that we should have been paying. And so there's another chart in that same document that was sent out that kind of talked about that. And so Brian, is there that graph that has that one right there? So if you look at that, you can see what we've actually paid compared to what we should have paid, and it's vastly different. So to answer Steve's question, what would we have had to pay? Technically, we could really be on the hook for all of that we didn't pay, that we really could have or should have paid had we been paying full apportionments. And so going forward, if we didn't leave, could the conference come back and say, well, you owe us for past apportionments? Theoretically, they probably could. And so those are liabilities that would exist regardless of whether we stayed or left. And if we do leave, they're just saying, then there's a prescribed formula saying, here's what you owe in apportionments to actually leave. Any questions on that? So I don't want to take too much time here, but just move on this assessment here. So what are your current pastor's intentions and plans? Will he or she remain UMC? Or is their intent to obtain credentials in the GMC? Is the congregation aware of the pastor's plans? Pastor Henry's been very clear on this. He intends to stay with Calvary. All right? How have the staff been engaged in the discussion around disaffiliation, including any implications for their employment? What's the staff's commitment to continue with the congregation if it pursues disaffiliation from the UMC? From what we can tell, I think all of the staff are on board with the disaffiliation route that we're taking. All right, and from a financial standpoint, we don't anticipate that would change. We have the funding to not make any staffing changes going forward. Next one, how has the congregation been informed about the disaffiliation process and its implications, and been engaged in discussions about the future vision for mission and ministry of this congregation? So I kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier. We've got a kind of a history or a timeline here of all the things that we've done as it relates to this topic in the last several years. So in 2018, we had 3 forums to discuss the future of our church. In 2019, we had a frequently asked questions letter that was released to the congregation, kind of addressing this whole topic and what are the issues surrounding it. In May 2019, we formed the church council unanimously approved this statement. The council leadership is committed to following the biblical traditional stance of the denomination and will form a strategic planning committee for the future of Calvary, reporting back quarterly to the congregation. So that started in May 19. So in January 2020, we had a non-binding vote regarding the potential denominational split, and asked the question, if the United Methodist Church denomination does not formally split after the May 2020 General Conference, would we be in favor of disaffiliating from the UMC? As we know, that did not happen. That was, COVID got in the way of that, and so that didn't happen. 92% of those that were surveyed say, yes, we are in favor of moving forward with disaffiliation. I was mistaken on the year that we started the Way Forward Committee. That was actually in April of 2020. Or that was in 2019, excuse me, and we paused in 2020, again, because of COVID. We've had numerous Q&As, town halls, correspondence, emails. You've seen a lot of that. And so and then just recently now, the survey that we've had with specific questions, and we've tallied that, and Pastor Henry's going to go over some of those responses as well. So I think we can honestly say, and I hope you would agree, that I think we've done our best to get the pulse of the congregation, have everybody's voice heard as much as possible. And so I think we can show to the conference that we've done what we need to do to make sure that we know where the congregation stands on this issue. Next question, if the vote were held today on disaffiliation, what is your estimated percentage who would vote yes? Again, based on recent surveys and so forth, we think that the number is probably 95% or more that would vote that way. And then it just has some other cleanup questions. But anyway, that's the survey or the readiness questionnaire that we need to have answered. This is what we're going to use, likely, and what the district superintendent is going to use in her determination as to whether or not we're ready to move forward to the next step on the process. So that meeting happens on Thursday. Again, everybody's invited to that, either in person or via Zoom. If you don't have the Zoom instructions or the invite, let somebody in the office know, and we'll get those to you if you want to do it via Zoom. That happens on Thursday at noon. From there, if it's determined by the district superintendent that we're ready to move to the next step, then we will schedule an actual date for a formal vote on this process. And that's when everybody will have their chance to vote. Now, okay, Clarence, go ahead.
On that date, everybody that's a member has a vote, have to be present. On that date that we set, every member has a vote, and they have to be present at the church to vote. There is no, ballot where you can do it by Zoom or anything like that. So you'll have to be here, and every person's vote will count.
That's correct, yes. You have to be a member, an official, recognized member of the church to vote. There are no proxy voting. There's no electronic voting. You have to be present to vote. And I believe this is true. It's the percentage of the people actually there is how they're going to determine, officially what the outcome of the vote is. So we want everybody there. We want as many people there as can make it. But it's the, what do they call that? Plurality of the members that are actually officially there and present that voted. It's not determined based on any percentage of those people there to the total number of the congregation. It's of the percentage of people that are there and voting at that meeting. If that is, if the plurality is to disaffiliate, that's how that would be calculated. Yep. Thanks, Clarence. And that's right, and it requires 2/3 majority of those there present and voting to approve a disaffiliation, or to move forward with a disaffiliation. Yeah.
Doug, thank you for all your hard work on this. It's a lot, and for everybody that's been working on this, thank you. I'm one where I think it's time to get out. My question on the finance piece of it, and when we're calculating kind of apportionments that we're kind of owed because we've been in there, I get it, but it's still frustrating to have to write a check for whatever, $400,000 to an organization that you're not happy with for the last 3 years when we've wanted to be out anyway. So I feel that frustration, but if that's what we need to do, I mean, I'm for it. But I'm wondering, you know, is there a way? Let's say if it's like that 350,000, you know, is there a way to say, hey, can we write this to this, you know, missions organization within the Methodist Church that we're more excited about than say just the general fund of the denomination? I think I probably know the answer to that, but I don't know. Might might be worth a conversation. So, it's just a comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and that would be a good thing if we could do that and choose where those dollars go. To my knowledge, there's been no discussion on that. I think, you know, we write the check, it goes to the conference, and they then have discretion in how those dollars are used. Andrea?
You know, thinking about that dollar amount is for voting. But, you know, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar. And I'm figuring these people are just Caesar. And God just needs to sell a few more cattle. And I think he'll bless us dipping our feet in the water and setting sail.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Other questions on the process and where we're at, on the dollar amounts, on the just the process in general?
I was just going to say, now is the time because people are pulling out. And this general meeting in 2024, if it does or doesn't happen then, most of the conservatives are going to be out of there, and then they're going to change the rules all again, and there won't be a way to get away or dissipate. It's only going to get worse from what I can see at the meetings and everything else, because people are leaving, and churches are leaving and forming a new deal. And as people leave, our voice gets lower and lower, so we're not going to have a say anymore on what we want to do. That's just the way I look at it. But that's the way it is, because in 2024, most of them conservative churches will be pulled out already, and then they're going to say, well, we want the building, we want everything, and we'll be stuck. So now is the time.
Is there any chance that Chris can say, you guys aren't ready on Thursday?
That's a possibility. I personally don't have that concern. I mean, I think it is a possibility. Everything's possible, right? I think we've been preparing for this for a number of years. I think we can prove that we've done what we need to do. We've heard from the congregation. We've, you know, gone through the steps of the process very deliberately and carefully. I really don't anticipate that happening, but that is a possibility. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not officially representing anything. You know, I think Chris Mutzenberger is our district superintendent. I really get the impression that she is on our side. While I think maybe personally she might be, you know, maybe on the other side of the issue a little bit. I don't know that. That's just my guess. But I do believe that she is sincere when she says, I want to help you through this process, do everything I can to make it as you know, straightforward and you know, least amount of pain as possible. I really do think that she is sincere. So I don't get the impression that she would do anything underhanded or to pull the rug out from underneath us or anything to sabotage that whole process. I really don't think that's going to happen. But I guess it's always a possibility. But I think we're prepared.
The other factor I would add Am I muted? Check, I am muted myself. Okay. And the other factor with that, Brian, can they put up that other slide? It's connected with the survey, but it seems apropos at this point. Um, is there one? I might not have sent one. So let me give you the. I thought there was a slide I gave the survey results. But currently we have 93 out of 94 people out of our congregation who have completed the survey. There's a 95th, but the answer was I'm not sure, and wasn't one of the options. So we're waiting for them to respond back to let us know. You got to check one of these three because that's not one of the options. So the options were yes to disaffiliate, no to disaffiliate, or we wait to disaffiliate, not at this time. And 93 out of 94, 99% consistently, it has been, it's time to go. Even with people who have lots of questions, it's 99%. So with the congregation that unified in its decision, in its voice, that's what they're wanting to see at the conference. What they don't want to see is 60% of the congregation is like, let's leave, 40% is like, no, let's not go. And it's causing a split in the church. They either want to see the whole church like saying, we're staying or we're going. They really don't want to see that center because they don't want churches battling and they don't want churches splitting. Our church, it seems to be overwhelmingly unified on this. So it would be hard, we'd be like, I'm with Doug, there would have to be like some strange reason all of a sudden to be like, well, you guys are not ready to disaffiliate because all of our paperwork, everything is in order. We've been following the checklist, and our congregation is saying, get out now. We're ready to go. We're tired. We've been wanting to go. And so that's been a lot of the feedback that the congregation has given.
As far as the congregational vote, does a certain percentage of the congregation have to vote, like have to be there?
Whatever number is there,
So if that's-
2/3 of that number has to vote to disaffiliate for that to actually be approved.
Yep. So if it's 10 people, 7 people need to vote in favor of leaving at least. That'll get you the 67%.
I just thought maybe there was a requirement that you had to have a certain percentage. Of
Nope, there's no quorum or anything like that. The quorum is whoever shows up.
And Chris, our DS, will preside over that meeting. And she'll have herself and others that she selects to be, to handle all the voting. It'll all be done by paper ballot in some fashion. And she will tally it. It won't be anybody from Calvary that's driving that whole process. She will be in charge of that process.
And it is secret ballot. So
And I would hope that more than 10 people show up because it is an important vote.
This isn't a very important vote. And so we hope that as many people as possible will show up.
I just wanted to make one other point just that I've been thinking about a lot and maybe others are thinking about is just, as we're leaving, I think it's part of the global Methodist church, but we can reevaluate. We're not stuck with that if we don't like that, I know there's still a lot of questions on that, if that's a good thing or not a good thing. It seems like it's the easiest way out right now. It's the clearest, but I don't think we're married to that forever if we as a congregation don't like that. And we can meet again, so.
And that is correct. And so part of what we're doing, Going GMC is the Global Methodist Church. We gave you resources on that. That's just the easiest jump if you want to going from one structure to another. The other options are exploring other denominations or possibly going independent. All of that requires a church, kind of what Blake is alluding to, that requires time to go through a discernment process. We as a church would go through a discernment process. Which denomination is the best fit for us? But in terms of the short timeline and what we're in, having governing rules and structures to be part of something that governs us, this is the quickest jump. But it's not official until we actually get the annual conference to vote to execute the disaffiliation. So during those months of waiting, we can be in discernment. Hey, we're checking the rules of the Global Methodist Church. We're checking the rules of different denominations. We're checking the rules of independent. What would that look like? And we can go through that discernment process as a congregation with the leadership. All of those options are available. But in terms of trajectory right now, if we're trying to have a clear point of saying we're going to be headed here, and then we'll evaluate afterwards because the timeline for getting out is so short. In terms of every day we're accumulating a cost. Every day we stay, the cost goes up because we owe apportionments. And so if we wait till November to say, well, let's discern and wait till November, well, we have to pay up to November. So we're trying to cut this thing off as soon as possible. And then we can start entering that discernment process. Once that piece of that process is done, we got it behind us, and we're just waiting for the vote, we can go, provided, everything's approved and the congregation still wants to go that way. Then we can enter that discernment process as a congregation. We can have those discussions, and you'll probably see a survey come out, kind of just a straw vote of the congregation asking, which direction do you think we ought to go as a congregation?
When does the meter stop on the accumulation of the apportionment? Is it when the congregation has settled that vote, or is it when the conference gives us the nod?
You want to answer, or you want me to
Well,
answer?
yeah, you could correct me because I'll probably
Okay.
get this wrong, but the meter still runs until we're officially disaffiliated, not from the date of the congregational vote. The thing about this process is we get to set that date. And so we want to give ourselves enough time to let the process play out thoroughly so we do everything that we need to do. But we don't want to set it out too far because that meter runs for every day that we're still part of the denomination. And so we would set that based on, again, we can't set a specific date until we go through some of these processes. But we set that whatever date that we decide that we're going to have it, when we're telling the denomination we have everything ready to go, all the agreements are drafted and whatever, and we can fill out our checklist and say we've done everything we need to do, that's the date then when the meter stops. Now, we need to know those specific dollar amounts prior to that, and so what the conference treasurer has said is we'll give you a little bit of, we'll estimate maybe the apportionments for like the last month or two or whatever based on historical giving and whatever, so that we know what that specific number is prior to the actual date. But we're being assessed based on every day up until that date that we've chosen.
And one of the things that was mentioned, and Jeff Pospisil, the conference treasurer, said, think of it as a closing date on a house is a good way to think about it. Everything has to be done on that closing date. Otherwise, the deal is null and void. So that's why Doug was saying, making sure we have plenty of time to complete paper transfers, make sure we can get the payment to them, whatever other things we have to take care of on our end that the conference requires. We want to make sure we give ourselves enough time, but we don't want too much time. So we're talking through what all of those processes look like, but until we get an actual conference date, until we know after the conference date what they're going to require, because we jointly draft the disaffiliation agreement with the conference. They have an agreement, but like Doug said, we pick the date. We tell them we want this to be our closing date, and we would calculate the costs up to that date.
I was just wondering, Henry, if you could, because I had asked you about voting age, because we've got some of our older youth that are heavily vested in this church that have gone through confirmation and everything. If you could address, that there's not, it's not 18 to vote, but our older youth that are considered members can also vote.
Excellent. I'm glad you reminded me because I've been meaning to try to keep mentioning that. So Paula asked a great question. We looked in the book of discipline. There is no minimum age for voting. If you're a professing member of this church, regardless of the age, you can vote. So if there are teens that are wanting to be part of this process, you're like, hey, I want my voice heard. I got some opinions and some thoughts on this. You're welcome to share those as well if you're a formal professing member of this church.
And I'll just remind everybody too, the official membership roster was sent out in letter format in the mail and through email. It's, I believe at the Welcome Center, or you can call Beth at the office. If you have a question, am I an official member or not? Please check those lists. Please call the office if you don't know for sure. Only those that are official members, and then we've recognized as members, are the ones that are going to count when we have that vote. And so please, if you don't know what your status is, please check that out.
Yep, that's by 29
This
June.
Wednesday is the deadline. So if there's any discrepancies or whatever, we need to have all that ironed out by Wednesday.
Voting happening on that Sunday? Or like, how are you gonna know who's a member versus who's just here and takes a ballot to vote?
Yeah, that's a good question. Likely there'll be people here for the meeting that aren't official members. But you're gonna have to put your name on that ballot. It'll be a secret ballot, where, your neighbor's not gonna know necessarily how you vote, but your name is gonna be on that ballot. And so when those ballots are counted, and the district superintendent will be in charge of that, they're gonna cross-reference that name with our membership roll. If that name is not on the membership roll, that ballot does not count.
No date has been set for the vote. That cannot happen until Chris meets with us this Thursday. So we will let you know about the date. And I think the council has recommended it will not happen on a summer weekend. It'll be a midweek vote.
Right, yeah. That would be our desire. We want to make it a day and time that is most convenient, or where we have the most opportunity for members of the congregation to actually be present and vote.
How will you notify the people when the vote's going to be then?
Yeah, a number of ways. It'll be on Sunday mornings in the pulpit. We'll send out, and this is a requirement. Every member will get a letter in the mail. So that's another thing. Make sure that we have your current address as well when you're checking on your, whether or not you're a member. So it'll be postal service. You'll get a letter in the mail. It'll be email from the pulpit. All the normal ways we communicate anything in this church, we will do all those channels to make sure that everybody is fully aware of the date and time that we actually have the official vote.
And the other thing with that is there's a 2-week minimum requirement before they can call any conference. So we can't, after 30th, we can't just come and say, well, we want to vote next Tuesday. No, you got to give the congregation 2 weeks of notifying and getting that information out before you can have any church conference.
Will there be a amount of time to vote? I mean, like 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock? What time of evening, if this is during the middle of the week, will it be?
If we call one, most likely, the last charge conference we did it on a Tuesday night during the regular council time. So we know a lot of people work during the day. It'll probably be in the evening, midweek day. We'll see what works best with the DS schedule and our schedule, provided she approves everything on Thursday.
Yeah, and then as far as the duration of the meeting, or when, we'll have plenty of time, when it's scheduled for everybody to come and vote. We're not going to limit it to, you got to be here in 1 minute window or your vote isn't going to count. There'll be plenty of time for anybody that wants to come and vote that evening to actually do that.
after vote and everything completed, will Chris still be? There'll be no, he will have nothing to do with us anymore.
Yeah, correct. And she actually addressed that in our one of the meetings we've had with her in the past. She's, and she was very clear that her role is to help us through this process, and she will be our district superintendent until the day she isn't, which is the date that we choose when the disaffiliation process would be over.
One small correction to that. Until annual conference votes, and they're looking to call a special annual conference. So all of this completes the work on our end, but the annual conference has to vote up or down, majority vote, to say whether or not that this is good, and they're going to go. So the final piece is, and for all intents and purposes, it's more like a formality, but it's still a requirement. So until the annual conference votes, we are technically UMC, but in terms of, realistically and practically speaking, until they do that formality, we are technically still under the UMC jurisdiction until they approve it. So that's when everything would end. If I'm understanding correctly, the disaffiliation execution is not done until the annual conference votes. Correct. You can't join any other place. We can't go to another denomination or anything. We go ahead and change our paperwork. But in terms of fully affiliated, in fact, the Global Methodist Church has that on their website. Once the annual conference votes, then we can do all the stuff preparing for it, have it in place. But until they vote and we hand them that paperwork saying we're no longer affiliated with the United Methodist Church officially, then we're still technically there. They're looking at calling a special annual conference. We don't have the date yet. Right now, it's next summer is the annual conference. But they're looking to try to have one this fall. With that said, once you kind of filled all the paperwork out, they're not going to have expectations of and the most important thing is the meter would have stopped running. So,
Right, to Andrea's point or question on that, the meter stops on the day that we've decided that we're saying we're done with the entire process that we need to do.
I just wanted you to clarify, there is one other church ahead of us in this process in the Dakotas, right? One church did disaffiliate already?
no.
Was it? No, they
We're-
did
we're
not?
the leading church.
We're the first one.
Yeah, there was a church that's already disaffiliated. That happened last year, and that's why they were very cautious this time because it was such an ugly mess in Dickinson, the way that church
Dickinson.
split. Yes, it was like narrow by a vote or two, that church.
But
voted
Dickinson did disaffiliate?
They did, and they went
And did the
independent.
UMC approve it? Like, did the conference vote to let them go?
Yep, and there was a
Okay,
lot of argument
okay.
about that. They understood that, hey, we're here for an up or down vote. It's not about, and that happened last year at the annual conference. We
Yeah.
were able to witness that, a lot of
So part
discussion.
of our diligence as a church, just following the checklist, being careful, is that we are also a model for churches that might come after us in this process. And I just want to say, I really appreciate Doug and Henry have handled this with excellence, and all of our communication with the conference has been just very honoring, and from the conference to us as well. So I appreciate that.
The other thing I'd like to say is just attending the annual conference this year is it was very clear that things are not really set in place as much for that Dickinson church. Lots of hurt, lots of things, because they had never done this before. So I am so grateful that over the year now, they have really put this whole process into place that we're following. Yes, it's been a lot of work, but compared to what Dickinson went through, I mean, really the conference and they've really done a lot. So this is step one, this is step two, compared to what Dickinson had to go through. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, I would echo what Kathy just said too. I think while the process is very deliberate and might even see a little onerous, it's really to protect us as much as it is to follow the rules of the whole disaffiliation process, because I think they want to make sure that we have a path and a checklist to follow so that we can say, yes, we have done all these things, all this due diligence, all the things that we need to do, so that we can say we have contemplated everything here as much as possible. And when we do have a vote and whatever, we can say that, we did our best to inform everybody, follow the process as much as possible and whatever. So it's really kind of twofold. It helps us as much as it does follows the rules of the conference.
All right. Is there any other questions? If not, I am going to share a little bit from the survey feedback. If I can find my pad somewhere. Thank you. You all gave a lot of great feedback, and there were a lot of questions. In that disaffiliation pack folder that you can find online, there's a frequently asked questions. All of those questions were generated from the survey. So a lot of questions came up about costs, what's going to happen to our church. I think Doug has answered all of those, but if you didn't catch, roughly we are on the bill for roughly $400K, give or take. And we keep our church, we purchase it for $1 in that formulation. There's a document called Apportionments, Understanding Our Disaffiliation Costs. It has these charts and graphs that we have in there. It has descriptions of the history, our payment history, and all of this stuff, and the grace that the conference has shown to us. So if you really want to understand the disaffiliation, that's a great place to understand the costs and why we owe the money we owe. And as Doug has said, because those are our obligations as a church, in United Methodist Church, we owe that whether we stay or go. We have an obligation that we have as a congregation. So, were there any other questions we didn't cover? We covered what happened to the pastor. Oh, membership in the UMC. If you desire to stay UMC, they have systems in place that they will help you connect with another UMC church in the area if this church decides to go ahead and disaffiliate and we go through the process. You don't want to stay, you want to stay UMC. The conference will help you with that. Is there a document with the terms of departure? That's the disaffiliation agreement that Doug spoke about that we'll have to put together and jointly with the conference. That'll specify all the specifics of what it means for us to go and what we have to finally owe in that finally document and what's the closing date. Why do we have to pay the UMC the money when they are the ones appropriating ungodly worldly values? I think that's been shared. Blake kind of was sharing that, and I'm assuming that's probably pretty much a corporate frustration. And so the short answer is because we said we're going to be a United Methodist Church, and as part of United Methodist Church, we're going to let our yes be yes and our no be no, and we're going to be people of integrity. We said we would do X, Y, and Z, so we're doing X, Y, and Z. And so I think the great language was used, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. We said that, hey, these are the obligations that belong to this big organization. We said we would pay them. Let's do what we say we were going to do. But the advantage to that is once the closing date comes, you're not paying that bill anymore. So like paying off your car, you get a raise back into your own budget. And so you can decide what to do with those dollars. And I believe one of the first things they decided is to start paying the loan back down. So why do we have to pay such a huge amount? I think I just answered that. Who will be governed? How will we be governed in the future if we go GMC? GMC is pretty much like the UMC because they're coming out of the UMC. A lot of the structures are the same. So I invite you to go to globalmethodist.org and you can look at their transitional book of disciplines and doctrines. And you can see all the stuff that is there. There are also some documents in that folder that I sent with lots of resources. Answer the question about staff. Methodist Church be governed. Methodist Church, GMC will have bishops. So it's an episcopate form of government. But the bishops will have term limits and they will have a system of accountability. They can be recalled if they decided to go off the path of orthodox teaching and doctrine. They can get recalled by the church. All right, and so there are some division. There's concerns about potential division in the church. We're at 99%. I don't foresee a lot of division in the church. The church seems to be of one mind on this. And concerned if we're going to be satisfied with the Global Methodist Church, Blake brought up a great point. We can evaluate and you can disaffiliate. You can decide even before we're officially affiliated if we as a church says, a couple of months, we've studied some other things, maybe that's not the best path, we can say no to that. And then there's resources for that. There was some concern about continuing using the name Methodist just because United Methodist is so recognized. But we've already kind of settled that issue with our branding. We don't use Methodist and we don't use any denominational labels. When people do a deep dive, they'll discover that we're a Wesleyan Methodist church in terms of historically and teaching. But most people aren't, unless you're just like really theologically nitnoid. In that case, you're probably specifically looking for a Wesleyan or a Calvinist or Reformed or a Baptist doctrine, and so you'll probably seek out those churches. Support from other churches. We have a organization of churches that we're already associated with. Evangelical churches in the area and the evangelical churches that are part of the Methodist Conference. Those are the churches we primarily fellowship with and have relationships with. We're not really connected. When I got here, I started connecting with the United Methodist churches in the area. And one of the things they say is like, oh, Calvary never plays with us, So, and it's just because, and I know a big part of that is because we're so theologically such a divide, we probably won't have joint worship services. We're not going to be doing. And so there's not a whole lot of terms in terms of just pastoral fellowship is what I've primarily done. But they know that we're probably not going to do any joint worship services because we're just theologically different. Do we have anyone to confer with or talk with or advise for directions? There's already tons of churches disaffiliating. In the document I sent, I mentioned some Facebook groups that you can jump on and you can see what other churches are doing kind of nationally. This is not just happening in the Dakotas. This is happening nationally. And some places it's been nice. Some places it's already been lawsuits. And some places there's been fights. And there's going to be fights. So you can kind of see what's out there. You can listen to the frustration. You'll know that we're not alone in this. We have Chris looking out for us now, what will happen when we leave the UMC. If we go Global Methodist Church, they're in the forming stages, so we're going to be on our own, but the reality is we function for the most part on our own anyway. Most churches do, even in the United Methodist Church. It's only when specific Methodist things come up and the Book of Discipline comes up with things like voting age that we have to go, hey, I'm reading this, am I reading it correctly? And that just has to do with their Methodist rules. But if we're under different rules, then we would just have a different authority. And many of that we can figure out for ourselves. And a comment out of all the survey that I thought was excellent, and I'm going to close on this unless you guys have any other additional questions or comments. Somebody asked this question: is God still God? If the answer is yes, then there's no questions. So I thought that was a great way to wrap it up. And so is there any last minute questions, comments, concerns? Yes, sir. Oh, you got him. I think you're on now.
Will the African church, will they just follow us?
The African church is a separate entity. So they would not follow us. They would have to go through their own process. They're a mission church. So they're still technically a church plant. And as a mission church, I'm not sure if they would have to disaffiliate or not. So they have one more year of support that the conference is going to be supporting them. After that, the conference turns them loose. So I'm not sure how that works for church plants. But where they are, they express a desire to go where we go in terms of affiliation. But they would have to have that discussion for themselves because they are technically a separate entity.
Hey, congregation, how about a round of applause for Doug and Pastor Henry for all their hard work? We appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
So with that, if that's all, who is an elder in our church? Elder, wise person. Carl Wendebow, a wise, devout man of God. Would you give us a closing prayer, my brother? He's going to bring you the mic.
Father God, we just turn to you because you are the leader of us all. And we just thank you for your presence here. And I would ask that you would continue to lead us in this movement that we are made. And we want to become closer to you, Lord, and to you, Jesus Christ. You are our Savior. Thank you for what you do to us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much, Calvary. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your support and your prayers. And if you can make it on Thursday, either in person or by Zoom, please do so. That Zoom link is in the email.